I want to go back to your definition of, if that's okay, your definition of racism
Yep.
and being prejudice plus power.
Yep.
So it seems to me then that an effective way to combat racism, and I think this definition is a great one, is it's hard to change people's hearts and their prejudice,
Mhm.
but it is somewhat simpler to dismantle power. Is that right or not?
Power is really tough to
Okay.
dismantle, and simply because, and again, looking at our own reform worldview and perspective, uh, we believe in total depravity. We believe that people, when given the opportunity, they're gonna do the wrong thing, and sometimes we and when that happens, it, those actions have also other effects in the lives of other people. Nobody gives up their power on their own. If it's going really good for you, and you got a pretty much a good monopoly on it, I mean, if Steve Jobs, God bless his, he started Apple, and if he can get more markets there, he's going to do it because that's the way that power rolls.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to in terms of asking people to share power, we're asking them to do something very countercultural. We're asking them to give away something that
Christ-like.
yeah, this is a precious thing. It is
Yeah.
like Golem saying the precious, which I think is because that ring is about power, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love just how the Lord of the Rings, how Tolkien really made power the central thing that people get crazy about, but they really want and don't want to give up.
And they win when it was given away.
Yeah,
The victory comes when it's given away, which is
yeah,
Philippians 2, straight up, right?
straight out,
Yep.
straight out.
So how? Okay, I'm intrigued by this. I've always been intrigued by power structures. I grew up in Central America, right, and
Yeah,
with poverty, and it always struck me how the poor never had power. That was the biggest thing that kept them impoverished was lack
right,
of power.
right.
Um, and so power structures intrigue me. And maybe that's why I went to right away when you said prejudice plus power. Like, how can we deal with the power part? Um, so, what does it look like for Christians then? What does it look like for white Christians uh, to give up power, to give it away, to share it? Maybe is a better way to say it. What would that look like, especially in terms of racism in our country today? Do you have any ideas of what good ways that would take, how that would take place in a good way?
Yeah, I think number one is you have to get approximate to people. I think
Mm,
when you're living in Costa Rica, you wouldn't have known that power was so central to how it affect the lives of people, to affect that how they educate their children, how they got jobs, how they interact with the government, how they interact with the church. All of those kind of relationships operate about how power is distributed or withheld. And so Christians have to get approximate to those kind of places where power is seen very differently than the place that you grew up at. And so I think what Byron Stevens says in the book Just Mercy, you got to get approximate. You got to get
mm,
close to
mm.
where power is not always in your possession, and you're looking at it from a different standpoint, a different angle, a different vantage point. And so you've done that pretty much most of your life, that you got approximate with people, you got close. I mean, when you were at Roosevelt, you were in the barrio, and and watching how white Christians interact with their geography, with the neighborhood. Those become ways in which gives us better eyes uh, to discover, wow, things are not as equal as I thought they were, and it helps to give more of a nuance,
Yeah.
that things are not necessarily black and white, but that when we get close to it, that when we hear of a mother who is afraid that an ICE agent will come and take her, leaving her
Yeah.
children to fend
Yeah.
for themselves.
Yep.
Uh, I think another way which whites can kind of learn about that is uh, begin to go back to the Bible. It's interesting to me that Jesus, throughout the entire New Testament, is always giving away his power when he could have very early used it. Why didn't he use it in Matthew 4 when the devil used the temptations? I think that that's a wonderful lens of how Christians are supposed to handle power. And every time Jesus responds by saying, "What is written?" he goes back to, "This is my mission. This is what I'm all about." And I
Yeah.
think it's a beautiful, beautiful picture of what Israel could not do. Let's talk about Israel was supposed to be the people supposed to model who
Yeah.
God was.
Yeah.
And they end up doing the very opposite. They were operating like the king of men's in Lord of the Rings. They didn't know how to model a kind of God who is willing to be a light to all of the nations. And here they couldn't do it. So Jesus comes in, and it became more about a person than a people. And Jesus comes in and he says, "Turn the bread into stone." No, there's not written, man does not live by bread alone. He could have very easily made himself a successful celebrity preacher. Who doesn't want a guy who can turn stone into bread? He would right now have his own channel. He would have his own show. People would love him. But Jesus doesn't do that. Then in the second one, he goes to the top of the temple, right? And he says, "Jump off. Angels will take care of you." And he says, "No, I'm not going to do that because it would probably be, it's a miracle." Watch the guy. I mean, just spectacular. It's like watching America Got Talent and doing all those crazy things, which would gain you eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't do it. And then the third one, in which the devil just says, "All I have is mine. I will give you all these words. All you have to do, Jesus, is just bow down and worship me." Which would have been the ultimate, which is say, join my force. And I will get you everything that this supposedly father you got. He ain't gave you nothing, dog. Jesus said, "Away from me. Away from me." That's not the mission that the Lord gave me. I find it interesting that Jesus rejected three opportunities to utilize power
Mm.
for his own
Yeah.
purposes.
Yeah.
And it's only then that the devil says, "Dang it." And then what? Angels, and then the angels come and they feed him. This
Yeah.
is a recapitulation of Israel.
Ah,
It's it, it-
I like it.
it's a
Yeah.
story of which any Jew would have read and said, "Oh no, he didn't. No, he didn't. He just threw the Exodus right in our face. He threw their exile right in their faces."
Yep.
And so Jesus is trying to give us a picture of, if you really want to use power well, don't use it just for your own purposes to secure your own life, because you are part of something bigger in which other people also need freedom and liberation as well. And you can play a role that shows that God is larger and more inclusive than just our own little, shall we say, tribe. So it brings us out of isolation and it brings us into community. I
That
don't know if that makes sense, but
that was fantastic. Um, Thank you. I love bringing back in the scripture with this.